This CCTV footage would show a woman walking to a department store looking for gardening supplies. The person on camera would be identified as 49-year-old Fiona Beal, a primary school teacher. She made a rather large purchase of compost and Cotswold stone, requiring 2 trolleys just to carry the items to her vehicle. Was she planning a large gardening project? The actual truth of this case would stun even seasoned investigators. Stay with us as we go through this case that has never been seen before on YouTube. Before going over the details of this case, we would like to send our thoughts and prayers to the family and loved ones of Nick Billingham. Northamptonshire, England, located in the central part of the UK, is a beautiful area, showcasing some amazing castles and pristine park lands. The city of Northampton, with a population around 750,000 people, combines the best of rural tranquility and the convenience of a modern town. Many people choose to set up their families in this area because of the great schools and easy access to public transport into London. 49-year-old Fiona Beal was one such individual, who was a Year 6 primary school teacher working at Eastfield Academy. From all accounts, she was a hard-working, honest individual and good at teaching children. 42-year-old Nick Billingham had captured the attention of the primary school teacher, and the two would start a relationship together. Nick was a builder and was very handy at fixing things around the house. Fiona would make the remark to her close friends that he was the best thing that ever happened to her. After only a short while, the two would decide to move into a Northampton home in Moore Street together. The two were in a committed relationship for 17 years, almost half of their lifetime together, and everything appeared to have been going well for the couple. That is, until Fiona would discover text messages on Nick's phone that would allude to him having an affair. Nick would admit to his unfaithfulness, but would claim it was only one time and that it would never happen again. Fiona would keep a journal where she would document her day-to-day, and would note that in a heated argument about the affair, Nick had called her old and fat, which she felt belittled by. The argument would end with the couple making up and deciding they could move past this issue. Nick would later write this letter to Fiona. "You are kind-hearted, generous, and the most beautiful woman in the world. I promise never again to belittle you or make you feel rubbish again. My body, my heart, my love has been yours since the day I met you, and will be until the day I die." It's not uncommon for couples to have issues with their relationships, and Fiona and Nick appear to have gone past the worst. Fiona would be seen in this video posted to Twitter dancing and enjoying herself while teaching at Eastfield Academy, not long after her and Nick had experienced issues. Sometimes, however, things are not always as they seem. The previous situation was eating away at Fiona, and she devised a plan that would solve the situation for good. November 1st, 2021, the world was under pandemic conditions, and Fiona thought she could use this to her advantage. Nick had headed out for the day to continue working on a house renovation that he had been close to completing for his job. As the day would come to an end, he would finish up and return home. Fiona would have a bath before luring Nick with a promise of intercourse up to the bedroom. She would later write this addition to her journal. It would read, "I encouraged the bath with the incentive of sex afterwards. While he was in the bath, I kept the knife in my dressing gown pocket, and then hid it in the drawer next to the bed. I bought a chisel, bin bag, and cable ties up too. I got him to wear the eye mask." Nick would be asked to wear the mask, with Fiona claiming she had a surprise for him. She would then pull out the knife and hit Nick in the neck with it, causing it to sever his jugular vein. Fiona would later recount the surprised look on Nick's face as he would simply ask, "Why?" As the confused man would lie on the bed with his life slowly slipping away, Fiona would simply stare at him, offering no help or explanation. She would later add to her journal entry with the following: "It was harder than I thought it would be. Hiding a body was bad. Moving a body is much more difficult than it looks on TV." Fiona had carried out phase 1 of her plan, and would continue on to phase 2. She would contact her employer, stating that she had tested positive for COVID, which at the time would mean a mandatory 10-day isolation period. This would give her 10 days of uninterrupted time to carry out the next planned steps. She would secure Nick's credit card and begin purchasing things from the internet. Beal would log on to his Amazon account, purchasing new bedding items to replace the bloodstained ones, an adult sex toy, and an herb grinder to grind up her marijuana. The spending spree with Nick's money was far from over, however. Beal would also place an order for an incinerator, which would be delivered to her home. Paint would also be purchased, and she would repaint the bedroom where the crime took place to cover the blood. She would then place a click and collect order from a local B&Q department store. Later that day, she is seen on CCTV coming to collect the order, which consisted of 50-liter bags of compost, 10 large bags of Cotswold stone, and a plastic trough. Beal struggles to pull the goods on the trolley purchased with the dead man's credit card. She would later return home and begin the process of creating a makeshift grave on the side of her property in which to dispose of the body. After having completed the ghastly deed, she would later set up her newly purchased incinerator. Any and all items that belonged to Nick were then incinerated, as any evidence of his existence was reduced to ash. Having completed phase 2 of her plan, she would now move on to the third and final phase. She would now continue on with life as per usual, returning to work teaching children. She would even take them on a school trip to London, carrying on her life as if nothing had ever happened. After a short while, Nick's family, who hasn't seen him in some time, would ask Fiona where he was. She would claim that they had both split up, as he was having an affair and that he had run away with this other woman. While the family thought that was rather odd, they would send Nick text messages, which he would respond to. He would claim everything was okay and he was doing well. Weeks would continue to pass by until Christmas would come around. Fiona would invite Nick's mom Yvonne around for a Christmas drink. She would gladly accept, conversing with Beal, not knowing that her son's dead body lay buried in the garden only a few feet away.
Fiona offered me a Christmas drink, so I sat there with this drink, but then it always gets to me because I think Nick was buried in the garden, just a few feet away, and I didn't know he was there.
Throughout the Christmas period and into early 2022, family and friends would continue to message Nick to check in with him. They would always receive a reply back, stating that he was fine and everything was good with him. Little did they know that Nick was already dead, and it was in fact Fiona that was sending messages to his family, assuring them that he was fine. In February of 2022, Fiona Beal would take leave from work, citing anxiety, stress, depression, and low mood as to the reason why. It is at this time that text messages from Nick would begin to go unanswered. This was because Fiona had rented a cabin in Cumbria, several hours away in northwest England. While at the cabin, she had sent messages to family members which gave them cause for concern. The cryptic messages hinted at her possibly doing something to herself. Fiona's family would contact police asking for a welfare check. Authorities would arrive at the cabin and find Fiona, with her journal sitting on a table for anybody to read. As one officer quickly gazed over the journal, he would come to the realization that this was in fact an admission of murder. Police would visit Beal's residence in March of 2022 to take a look around. Initially, they would find nothing out of the ordinary and would leave the house having found nothing. That is, until they returned the following day to have a second look. In the basement, they would locate a mattress with a large bloodstain on it. This would give police an insight into the horrific acts that took place here. As they would search the property further, they would question what looked to have been a recently renovated section of the garden. They would excavate the area, which would in turn reveal the mummified remains of Nick Billingham. He had been wrapped in blankets and was in an advanced state of decomposition. Fiona Beal was immediately arrested and charged with murder. When the news came out publicly, the community was absolutely shocked. The well-respected woman that had taught many of their kids had led a secret double life of a murderer. She would eventually be sent to trial, where her defense attorney Andrew Wheeler would praise her for pleading guilty, calling her actions brave and courageous. He would add the comments, "She has had the courage to enter a plea to murder, which as the court knows happens extremely rarely." Mr. Wheeler would go on to tell the court that Beal cannot remember any of the details of the killing or the period after due to traumatic amnesia. Fiona Beal had planned on taking her own life while at the cabin in Cumbria, leaving her journals as evidence, but didn't have the guts to go through with it. As details would come out throughout the trial, she would claim that she was mentally abused by Nick, which led her to carry out the horrific act. Claims of multiple personality disorder were also brought to light, although no concrete evidence could ever substantiate her claim. She would initially plead guilty of manslaughter, but would eventually change it to plead guilty to the charge of murder. Judge Mark LeCraft would have some damning comments as he described the crime that took place.
Having done what you did, you pretended to the outside world that Nick had left you and was having an affair. You lied to his mother, family and close friends, to your own family and to those you worked with about what you had done. Those lies continued for months. A detailed schedule of events spanning the period from the 27th of October 2021 through to March 2022 shows your planning, how you acted to fulfill that plan, and it sets out the details of the deception you engaged in after the killing. You showed no regret in your actions and instead went online using Nick's money to purchase cleaning, replacement items to cover up that you had killed him. You brought everything you used to bury him with his own money, which I find diabolical and disgusting. The pathologist states that the cause of death was a single stab wound to the right-hand side of the neck, transecting the right jugular vein and incising the esophagus and trachea. It would have required moderate force, but severe force cannot be excluded. The wound was 6 centimetres deep, the entry width 3.7 centimetres. The pathologist also states that the neck wound would not be expected to be immediately incapacitating, and this ties in with the entry in your journal as to him asking why when you were in the process of carrying out your planned attack. There are a number of trips to B&Q to acquire the materials that you used, some acquired using his bank card or account to make the burial of the body complete. There are texts to those who Nick worked for, his friends, the use of accounts in his name to acquire other items, including domestic bedding and a vibrator, as well as fabricated messages from his phone to yours to support the narrative that you were giving to others, including X. You purchased many discretionary items for the home and yourself over that protracted period, and continued to use Nick's phone to access pornography on numerous occasions. You used cannabis extensively in this period, often purchased for you by X. I do not wish there to be any misunderstanding as the sentence passed. As with the passing of any life sentence, it is that, a life sentence, in your case life imprisonment. In determining the minimum term, the court is not saying that you will be released at that date. The sentence is one of life imprisonment. The minimum term is the term you must serve before the parole board can consider your case and consider whether you are someone where it is safe for you then to be released on licence or not.
Fiona Beal would have the chance to be paroled at 69 years of age. Although she has the chance of parole, there's no guarantee that she will be granted it. This case is disturbing for many reasons. Fiona Beal, from an outside perspective, was a normal primary school teacher. She was highly regarded as a teacher and had no previous convictions. There was nothing to suggest through her professional life at school or her personal life that she was capable of such a terrible crime. This really puts into perspective that you never really know what people are like behind closed doors and what skeletons they might have hiding in their closet. For Nick Billingham's family, this finally brought some closure for what was a terrible and traumatic time in their lives. If you enjoyed the video, consider becoming a channel member. You can find the option below with the join button. You'll get access to exclusive perks and have videos released to you first. We also plan on expanding our member section in the future to include giveaways. Also get subscribed so you don't miss out on our next deep dive into another intriguing case. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.